On this episode, we discuss some of the latest happenings in the UFO world, including sightings over the White House and updates to those Navy videos. Then, we talk about the alien technology claims of Bob Lazar and its possible connection to the discovery of bizarre, mummified bodies found in Peru. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golembeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. Welcome to Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and tonight we're talking about UFOs and alien presence on this planet. Are they still coming to visit us? Have they visited us in the past? And is there evidence? Recently, something has come and hovered over the White House. So I picked, there's lots of different publications that covered this, but the Washington Examiner I thought was an interesting article. It's titled Birds, Balloons, or UFO, What Violated the DC Airspace? So if you haven't heard this story, several days ago at 8:30 a.m., something came and hovered over the White House Capitol. And something like big, slow-moving blob of some sort. And so they went to check it out. There was nothing there. Of course, they came out and said it must have been a flock of birds. However, that's... I mean, flock of birds fly over the White House all the time. Right? I mean, like, yeah. I'm not at the White House, but I'm pretty sure a flock of birds flies over the White House.
And it flew within, they said, about 15 miles of like the White House or that all that important area, because they triggered like what they call it, I was going to say Agent Orange, but it's an Aircon Orange was the classification that it was supposed to have triggered. And that is like something that lasts for like a few minutes tops while they figure out if it's a threat or not. And then, but this time it lasted for like 30 minutes. And because they couldn't work out what was going on. And so
the flock of birds just circling in the same exact slow-moving blob area?
The radar technology is something I was reading, and everyone's super vague about it, too. Like, no one has, like, any idea what it was.
They scrambled jets, and they flew in a helicopter. So jets. They obviously weren't joking around, and it clearly wasn't something they get all the time.
Yeah.
And the fact they said a flock of birds for something, and they scrambled jets...
Well, the radar system is called the Sentinel.
Yes,
the Army radar system.
So it's one of the most
the government's inner sanctum.
Yeah, one of the most like heavily scrutinized area of airspace in the country, probably the top. Yeah. And so you got to imagine that, and that radar system, it actually can distinguish between birds and weather patterns and aircraft and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
It can distinguish between the
two. It can do it, yeah.
Yeah,
so to say that it was a flock of birds
to.
is like ridiculous. Like you said, that area.
They should be able to know that. They should know that.
Yeah, that area is like constantly there's birds going in and out of there. It's just airspace, you know.
Right.
So obviously it was something that they and no one has any like footage. Like if it was an aircraft of some kind, no one saw it with the naked eye, or they didn't get any video of it. It only turned up on the NORAD radar.
So it's just we have too much high tech equipment these days to actually say that it was a flock of birds, but it just goes unnoticed. It's very interesting. However, Fox News is ahead of the UFO game.
Tucker Carlson and Fox News. There's one thing I love about Fox News, and that's UFO coverage. Break it down. But
it's kind of funny because Tucker has this like video. They're like, he's got inside information. There was one thing I came across where he was like, it was like a video, and he's like, well, I was talking to this guy, and this guy said something happened. And that was the end of the clip. And I'm like, wait, what? I mean, like, how many times do I interview people that say something happened?
Right.
Like, that was like the only thing. That was like it. But they're leading the charge. They're leading the charge on UFOs.
Yeah. That's funny.
At least someone is.
No, I always think it's funny. Tucker Carlson makes me laugh. One thing I thought that was really interesting about this is that an unnamed defense official officially said that it was either birds, atmospheric anomaly, or a drone. It's not a drone. That's ridiculous. Birds, as we discussed, is probably not true. That's ridiculous. The thing that interested me was the atmospheric anomaly. Where have we heard that before? In the 1950s, there was an event called the Washington Merry-Go-Round, which I know you guys know about, that it was a long story where over the White House, UFOs were seen by multiple witnesses, people in the sky, people on the ground. It was picked up on radar from not just one, but multiple stations and confirmed. So it was a mass witness, mass radar event that happened in the 50s over the White House called the Washington Merry-Go-Round. It has other names, too. If you go on Wikipedia, it's called the Washington Flap. It's called the Washington National Airport Sightings. It's called the Invasion of Washington. No one could pick a name for this thing.
I mean, it was like front news. They had pictures of it and everything.
Yeah,
1952, right? 1952?
Yeah, 1952. Yeah. And the reason why I wanted to bring up the anomaly thing is at the end of it all, it caused an hysteria. They had a national press conference. A general went on TV and said it was weather eversions or temperature eversions. And that's
what does that mean? There's a temperature eversion and then there's things in the sky hovering about the White House?
Right. It seems like that's almost more absurd. Like either you say... This is what's funny about that. That makes me feel like you're lying. If you just said, I don't know, it's over to me. I'm like, you don't know. It could have been anything. But when you say something specific like it was birds or it was weather aversions, that's almost offensive to like the radar operators who are professionals who look at it every single day.
But that was before Google. They could get away with saying whatever.
That's true. And back then the government was trusted. Oh, the government said not to talk about it and that's what it is and I believe them. And now like no one believes a damn thing that comes out of the government's mouth. But I just thought it was like, it's one of those things where you say that and it's just like, that's just like, I'd rather you say nothing because now I'm suspicious. Now I'm like, okay, there was a UFO over the White House. They couldn't figure it out. They wouldn't scramble jets for birds. I mean, I need to do more research. Like, how many times have jets been scrambled over the White House in the history of
Yeah, that came up in one of the articles, actually, and someone said, this is a really rare event. And the fact that they couldn't distinguish whether it was birds or something else is crazy. That's nonsense.
It's crazy.
There's no way they could have done that.
Plus, they called it a slow-moving blob.
Yeah, slow-moving blob, and also, like, hovered for a bit, too.
Oh, so if it hovered, that is classic UFO type stuff. So
yeah.
That's really interesting. But why would they... So, what? Okay, let's speculate for a second. Okay, what if a UFO or some sort of other race was hovering over the White House for a second, what are they trying to say? What's going on?
Or maybe
there?
it's a top-secret mission from another country. Some invisible cloaked
Yeah, that was the other thing
device.
I was like, too.
That's
Like,
interesting.
It may not have been aliens or whatever. Like, that's...
And then they can't come out and say anything.
Yeah, and then they wouldn't be able
what are
to
they going to say?
Oh,
yeah.
Russia has
or
a
China just had a
cloaked
secret,
device.
Yeah, some sort of secret UFO that was able to invade this close to the White House or whatever. Obviously, they don't want anyone knowing that.
Huh.
Like, you wouldn't want any of the public to think that there was some other country that had that kind of technology that just caught us with our pants down all of a sudden,
No, totally. You can use that same argument for just UFOs. The government wouldn't want the public to know that they had no control over our airspace. That's a big issue that goes into it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people out there, when they talk about UFOs, they're like, if it was real, if it was aliens, why didn't they just land on the White House lawn? And I think maybe this latest event is not evidence of that. But I think the 1950 event, the Washington Merry-Go-Round, is a very clear example of like, hey, we're here, and maybe you don't have the consciousness yet for us to fully reveal ourselves, but we're clearly showing ourselves to the highest authority. So when people ask, like, why haven't the aliens have shown themselves with the government, I think the 1950 incident is a good example that they did, and maybe we're not ready. Maybe it's not about them, it's about us not being ready for it. And we really, I mean, not to go into a deeper discussion about UFOs and consciousness, but, like, clearly they're there to me. But we are. Clearly they're there, and clearly they're not fully revealing themselves to the general public, even if the government's controlling information, not letting us know. There's a reason why it's not all in the open, because the evidence to me is overwhelming that's happening. So why aren't they fully revealing themselves yet? And I think it's because we're not ready. I think consciously, it's not about like if people are religious and they're going to lose their mind if they're real. I think it's more like we have to elevate our consciousness to a different level to accept it, because I think it's far more bizarre than people realize. It's not just lights in the sky or an alien from a different planet. It's an alien from a different planet in a different dimension from a different time. It could be something so bizarre that we are not ready for it, and I think that's really fascinating.
Kind of wrap our minds around it. But this one was kind of different because I don't think the general public would have even got wind of this because no one saw it.
Yeah.
It was only because the White House went on lockdown that anyone even knew what was happening.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they had to come up with a story about it. Like, if they didn't lock down the White House, no one would have known anything.
No.
It would have just gone completely under the radar.
But they locked down the White House.
Yeah.
So it's obviously a serious threat. They don't just do that because a door alarm goes off. You know what I'm saying?
And like I said, that happens with that Aircon Orange classification or whatever it was. But that's only supposed to last for a couple of minutes while they determine whether it's a threat or not. But it lasted so much longer than that. So they just didn't know what the fuck was happening.
Somebody knows something. Well, this reminds me, there's more going on in the UFO world right now. There's also an update with the Nimitz incident. For those who haven't listened to other podcasts or following the UFOs events that are going on, the U.S. Navy has come out and said that these videos that are on the internet are authentic UFO videos that were filmed by fighter pilots in 2000-something. With the Nimitz carrier group, and multiple pilots come forward. The videos are authentic. They are called UAPs. And all these pilots that come forward, it's all verified. Latest information that's come out, there's 5 new witnesses in this Popular Mechanics article you can find that go into different angles of this incident. Guys who weren't pilots who were on the ship. So the pilots, when they came out, didn't say that it was being covered up at all. They just said they saw them, they came back, no one ever talked to them about covering up or not talking about it or not signing an NDA. But these 5 people who were on the ships, who were on the aircraft carrier or other ships associated with this carrier group, go into detail about not just a black helicopter showing up with 2 dudes, but these 2 dudes who showed up, not men in black, just normal guys, nothing crazy, showed up and took directly from them the hard drives that contained all the electronic incidents or information from the event. And I thought it was really fascinating, one, that these guys are coming forward, which is good, but the weirdest part about the article to me was that Favors, the lead pilot who's on Joe Rogan, who's been all over the place now in the show Unidentified, is saying, like, well, I was one of the top 20 most important people, our highest ranking on the ship. I would have known if a helicopter showed up and took everything, and I never signed anything, so that can't be real. So I think it's fascinating that we have a real event verified by the Air Force, other people who were there saying they witnessed it, but then the pilot is saying, no, I would have known that. You guys must be lying. I thought that was really interesting. And a cool update to the Nimitz incident. More information about it.
Right. Well, and again, that article was saying that the guys who were actually running the radar were hearing all of these like ghost tracks and like picking up all these weird signals. They're kind of ordered to go check it out. So like it's not just the pilots who witnessed it. It's like a whole group of people that were monitoring this area and saying there's something weird happening. That they were like, okay, fine, we need to send pilots out to go check it out.
Yeah. Oh, so that's how it started? They were hearing things on like radar?
Well, they were picking up things on the radar.
On the radio?
What they were calling ghost tracks.
Yeah.
So they were picking up signals and
describe
like
what that
weird
was
stuff.
exactly?
And they're like, it kept happening. So they decided, okay, yes, you're right. We should send somebody out to go check it out.
Huh, I wonder what that
I also
sounded
find
like.
it weird. It's off the coast of California, right? There's also apparently that alien base outside of Malibu.
Catalina? Off the coast of Catalina in Malibu?
Like Channel Islands, Malibu area, right?
I'm thinking the same thing, yeah.
But, I mean, there's just a lot of weird stuff out there.
Yeah, totally.
There's a lot of weird... There's, having worked with MUFON, there's, like, hundreds of thousands of reports of people seeing UFOs in that, like, off the coast, like, looking at that area.
So there's going to be a base underwater. That's basically what everyone's getting at. This is what's interesting to me. Favors is like, there's no way that a helicopter landed and took everything. He doesn't talk like that, by the way. He's a nice guy.
East Coast.
Yeah, but
it's coming out.
He sounds like a real jerk.
No, he's a great guy. I'm actually like, he's my hero. He's coming forward with this. But he did acknowledge that the data records did disappear. Huh. So he's saying, like, I would have been known if someone showed up and took them, but he is acknowledging that they disappeared. So the reason why this case is so fascinating to me, because it's 2 things. It's proof of something anomalous, and it's also proof potentially of how much the government's been covering up things. Which are basically 2 sides of the same coin in the UFO world. Right. Like, it's not this anomalous together. I thought that was really fascinating. I mean, a black helicopter landed on the ship, and everyone saw it, but he's saying no, but the data was taken. I don't know. But what's also interesting is...
of course, because they haven't figured it out yet.
Right.
I mean, they're not going to tell us.
There was definitely an investigation. But I thought what Luis Elizondo said was really interesting. And for those who don't know who he is the guy who came forward first from Pentagon and said these videos were real, and now he's in the public and not working for the government anymore.
So he was the guy that basically, for lack of a better term, tricked the Navy into releasing these videos.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. That's him. He said...
He tricked?
This is what he said was really interesting. They asked him, like, what do you think about this? He said, a comprehensive investigation was conducted, he confirmed that, including various data sources, in which conclusions remain in the providence of U.S. government. The reason why that's interesting, because right before he answered that, he was asked, like, does the U.S. government know what it is? And right now that's coming out like they don't know, right? But what he's hinting at there is that they do know, or there's way more information. So it's not just like we saw UFOs in the sky and we recorded it, we don't know what they are. It looks like there's probably more to it, and they know what's going on or know what it is, and they're covering that up, which I thought was just like, that's when it gets deep and interesting, and like, I just need to know,
Josh can't sleep at night. He's just Googling.
He's Googling the shit out of this.
Well, that's really interesting because Bob Lazar, if people don't know who he is. He's worked on some top secret stuff, top secret technology, apparently UFO technology that
Yeah.